Nicholas Meyer, director and one of the screenwriters for Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, didn't want to do the sequel, The Search for Spock, because he felt resurrecting Spock diminished the impact of his death in Wrath of Khan. I agree. While I enjoy Search for Spock, the movie exists to undo everything from Wrath of Khan. Lieutenant Saavik, introduced to be an important part of the crew of the Enterprise, is only in a few scenes. The Genesis device that can terraform worlds is actually a failure. Kirk's family is swept under the rug, and Spock's back to life. But maybe you could have satisfied the upper echelons in bringing Spock back to life while not diminishing the effect of his death. My first suggestion would be the Enterprise is in the middle of some adventure and an energy wave zaps them to the mirror universe, where the good guys from our universe are evil. In the episode Mirror Mirror, our Kirk convinced Mirror Spock to be a better person. What if he did, and it had disastrous consequences? The Empire lashed out at Spock and killed his family. Spock's coup resulted in a galactic civil war. Mirror Spock inspired others to follow his example, while many liked the way things were. Mirror Carol and David Marcus invented a Genesis device, but instead of terraforming planets, they wanted a weapon to avenge Kirk's death. An idea for Lieutenant Saavik was she was actually going to be part Romulan, so Mirror Saavik gives in to her Romulan heritage. She didn't have a Spock to mentor her. She's allied with the Mirror Marcus family. When Mirror Spock sees the Enterprise, he's furious. He blames Kirk for setting all of this in motion. Most of the movie would be adventures in a dark version of Star Trek, and when the crew sees a narrowing opportunity to return to their own reality, Mirror Spock gets dragged along because they don't have time to drop him off or their window will close. Leonard Nimoy can stretch his acting muscles for multiple movies, playing a character he is familiar with, but different enough to have fun with it. The effects of original recipe Spock's death are still felt. Since nobody would go for that, my next option is to work with what the movie gave us. We've got pacing problems. It's half an hour before the plot of Kirk getting Spock's body and mind to Vulcan is cemented. Then another 15 minutes before the crew get going on the mission. It's an exciting 15 minutes, my favorite portion of the whole movie, but it would be nice if we could have gotten the plot rolling sooner than 45 minutes into an hour and 45-minute film. After a couple of scenes early in the movie establishing some Klingons who want the Genesis device, it's nearly halfway into the movie before we see them again. The Klingons certainly do a whole lot of sneaking around, don't they? One of their own finds out about the Genesis device when she transports the information to Christopher Lloyd. By the way, how did she even get that information? Spock didn't even know about it in Wrath of Khan, and she has to be eliminated. Why? She's one of you. You're all fighting for the Klingon Empire, right? All the subterfuge, we're quietly going to the Genesis planet to take prisoners so we can get what we want. That doesn't seem very Klingon. Why are there only like 3 Klingons on this ship? Sure, makeup and models for ships might not be cheap, but we find out in Voyage Home this wasn't rogue Klingons doing their thing. This was sanctioned by the Empire. Why such a small group? Why not go in guns blazing and plant your flags on Genesis, then threaten all-out war against the Federation if they don't get what they want? From what we see in the movies, while the Klingons weren't friendly with the Federation, they weren't actually at war. In the original series, I don't think they were really at war. Their conflict always felt colder, with occasional hot flare-ups. Up the ante to more than just this ship versus the Enterprise. You don't have to have fleets of ships fighting each other, but it might be nice if the stakes were higher than Spock might die if we fail, since we already saw that happen in the previous movie. While the motion picture was responsible for the new physical design of the Klingons, it was this movie that reinvented their behavior from what we had in the original series. This movie gives us a lot of the lore that would carry over into the next generation, so these Klingons not acting exactly like what we would see in that series is understandable since they hadn't quite cemented the typical Klingon behavior yet, but it would solve a lot of our pacing problems if we went in this direction. First 10 minutes of the movie, the Klingons make their ultimatum. Genesis is ours. We spit on your decree that this world is off limits. Saavik and David are not exploring the planet. What can you possibly find down there? It's a planet. You've seen a million of them. These two will stay on the ship. This gives us more chances to see Kirk interact with his son. And instead of Spock's father telling Kirk he needs to get Spock's body back to Vulcan, we find this out from Bones. Since Spock slipped himself into Bones before he died, Bones should know what Spock knew. Outside of Bones trying the Vulcan death pinch and reciting some coordinates in a way Spock would have, he's basically regular Bones. Make him act more like a composite of Bones and Spock. Since we're talking about higher stakes, it shouldn't just be we might not be able to resurrect Spock, but we might lose Bones too. With the Klingons publicly taking the Genesis planet and demanding the device, instead of the Federation forbidding Jim from going back, they send the Enterprise there, since they are the most familiar with what's going on the planet, since David and Carol will be on the Enterprise. With Bones and Saavik explaining the soul transference thing, Jim realizes he messed up, so he uses this opportunity to not only prevent war with the Klingons, but fix his mistake from the end of Wrath of Khan. Everyone splits into pairs. While they know Spock's corpse is somewhere on the planet, they don't know where. It would be nice to explore some of the other characters besides the Holy Trinity. In movies, it's harder to explore the entire cast like you could in a 20-episode season, but Kirk's mission to save his friend doesn't have to take up the whole movie. The scene of the crew going rogue and stealing the ship is great. Again, my favorite scene in the movie. But all it shows is they're all willing to throw their careers away to help Kirk help Spock. We don't get anything specific about Uhura or Sulu or Scotty. Pairing up, say, Saavik and Scotty would give us a chance to know these characters individually. Maybe Scotty is thinking of taking some time off to visit his family since his nephew died in Wrath of Khan, and this wouldn't be too much longer after Wrath of Khan. You could have the Klingons take some hostages, and Kirk has to decide, do I let my mission to save Spock lead to someone else dying? I don't especially like David Marcus dying, since we only just met him, and outside of Kirk's rage in this movie, I don't think David's death is even mentioned until the 6th movie. The Klingons could threaten Sulu or Uhura, but I don't think anybody needs to die in this one. Killing David and pretending he didn't exist for 2 movies is too easy. Keep him alive. Let Kirk try to learn to be more of a family man. He's been married to the Enterprise for decades. Let him learn to spend some time with his son. That forces your character to grow and change, even at this stage in life. David doesn't have to be part of later movies, but just mentioning that Kirk has kept in touch with David would be a way to let these movies have a little bit more repercussions. Kirk is able to rescue Spock's body and incapacitate the Klingons somehow. The Klingon government would of course disavow the actions of this crew, even if they really were sanctioned by the Empire. They can't admit to that without owning up to a political scandal. The Enterprise makes it to Vulcan, they bring Bones and Spock's body to get everything sorted out, and Spock's memories are not completely restored. They're partially there, but just scrambled enough that he's effectively a new character, and he would have to reform relationships with the crew, acting different than he did before. The effects of original recipe Spock's death are still felt. This one, I get the feeling they were kinda trying to go with, as Spock was acting a little off in Voyage Home, but then by the time you get to Final Frontier, he's back to normal, and you wouldn't even know Spock had died. You could take this in a bold direction, say, with his mind basically a tabula rasa. This time, maybe Spock would rather pursue a life on Vulcan, away from Starfleet. That might be too much of a change since this movie existed to bring Spock back, and you'd want him to actually be back on the Enterprise, but maybe new Spock could at least contemplate it. You could keep the core of the movie we got, but juice it up just enough that I'm not noticing some of the issues that I had with it. I hope you guys like this one, because for the rest of this month, Star Trek videos. I'm looking forward to those, and I hope you are too. Until then, I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.